The only thing left, well, there's also that part that helps hold the shoes on. The only other thing to do is to remove these, and I was going to mention how easy these are. This is like a nail that goes in from the back here, and it's got a flat spot on this end, and the washer or retainer on the outside has a hole in the middle with a slot which is set 90 degrees to it. So all I do is put my finger on the back where the head of that unit is. Using this tool, I put it on, push against the spring pressure, and rotate 90 degrees. That now releases that shoe. And as you'll see, there is the retainer, the spring, and then the spring pocket. This shoe will now come off and lay down. Here's that pin that goes with it. So what you'll have is this will sit up against the backing plate, goes through the backing plate, through the brake shoe, then you'll have that unit on there, then you'll have the spring on there. And the way this locks on is, as you see, that's a slot, and that's flattened. So that basically will just slide on, rotate 90 degrees, and it locks in place. So you see it's locked there, and it comes off nice and easy. If I was servicing the brake shoes themselves, on this particular vehicle I would have one additional step, and that would be to remove this clip here. So I could take this bracket off. This is the bracket that works with the parking brake, and it has a pin on it that goes through to the front, and then they have this little locking retainer that is a throwaway. You just push it on, squeeze it shut. There's nothing like that on the front shoe. And I didn't mention before, but you have these two units here, these push rods that actually do engage the shoes. So again, hold the back, push that in, 90-degree turn, and it's off. And that one will just lift off. Once that's off, there's a number of things I want to look at here. This area here is where the brake shoes sit, and I want to give a little visual inspection there. Make sure it's okay. The other things is, you'll see spots here that are, for lack of a better term, they're slightly polished. These are flats or lands where the shoe actually rubs up against the backing plate, and you'll want to check that to make sure these are in fact very flat and not corroded. Sometimes they'll actually have a groove worn in them, so I check those all by feel. And these ones are all just fine. As we service the brakes, I will show you how to properly service those to get them back into use. If you look behind here, there's a little rubber plug. That's the plug that allows you to adjust your brakes. You adjust using the brake adjusting tools here to rotate the star wheel. At this time, I will usually pull that plug out just to make it easier to get at it later. Pulls out from the back. Easy to pull out, they're easy to put back in. Now, I'd mentioned before how you could see the leaks. Now we'll get a better view of it. You can see the moisture in there. You don't want that. The next item is going to be trying to get the brake line loose, and for that I'm going to be using the flare nut wrench. You can use an open end, however, the failure rate is quite high. Now, I have to find one that fits. In this case, it's a 10 millimeter. Also, if you notice, the bleed screw is the same size. If you were just going to bleed these brakes, the way I do it is using the power of inertia. And what I'll actually do is I put the wrench on there, and I'll actually give it a quick tap with my hand. And doing that, I can usually break it free, and then what I'll do before I loosen it is I'll move it back and forth, possibly lubricate it again to get the bleed screw loose. You can see fluid starting to come out of it. Okay, but in this case we don't need to do that. But what I do need to do is get this line loose, and I'm going to use the same principle. I'm going to put that on the line, and I'm going to try and put it at a position that it's easy to work at. I have a position here that would work well, except the bleed screw is in the way. I could take the bleed screw out, but then I'd start losing fluid, which makes a mess. It's not that I'm going to lose the fluid, because I'm going to be replacing it anyway. Put the wrench on there, and watch the line carefully. I'm going to give this a wrap with my hand, and you can see the line moving with this fitting. That is something you don't want. So work it back and forth. So I've loosened the fitting from the backing, or from the wheel cylinder, but the line is still sticking. So as I try to rotate that, the line moves with it. So I'm going to take my other hand, secure the line, and try and wiggle it again. It's not coming free. You see that? So I'm going to make sure that's tight. I'm also going to make sure the bleed screw is tight. And I'm doing this all by feel. And the reason I want those tight is because brake fluid is flammable, and I'm about to use the torch. Light the torch. And you want to lightly heat the line. Now that flame is from the penetrating oil. I'm just trying to heat the fitting just lightly. You don't need it red hot. I'm just trying to get it warm. If you get it too hot, it might actually expand the brake fluid and pop the pistons out. Now, while that's hot, I want to get the wrench on it and give it another try. But you also have to be careful now, because things are starting to heat up. And you see now, I'm starting to get that fitting loose from the line. That's because that fitting just expanded enough. Now I'm going to work it a bit, and I'm also going to give it a little shot of the penetrating oil. And that lubricant will work in there. Put it on there, and you see the nut is nice and loose. And I don't just turn it out, I make sure it feels free. Now it's turning freely, it's going to come out easy. Before I take it completely out though, I want to loosen those bolts that hold the wheel cylinder on, this bolt and the one over here. The reason being is the longer this line is off, the more fluid leaks and the bigger mess you have. So I have the 10 millimeter socket, which is the size I have. It needs. I get the ratchet on it, and again, a quick pop using the inertia. Instead of even pressure, I pop it fast. If it feels tight, or it feels like it's tightening, reverse your ratchet, turn the other way. Any rust that's getting galled up into the threads will break free, and you should be able to turn this out the rest of the way easily. And a quick wrap with my hand. You might have even heard a little tick as it came loose. This one's coming out and not feeling like it's getting any tighter, so it's going to likely come all the way out with ease. Don't discard those bolts, you're going to be reusing them. So now everything's loose. The only thing left to do is remove the cylinder and replace it. Now what I'll do, just in case I have to delay a little bit, is I have a rubber vacuum plug here ready to go. I'll get on the line here, undo it with my fingers, and as soon as it's off, you'll see fluid starting to come out. If I was going to leave this off for a long time, I would definitely want to plug this. Normally, I would be putting the wheel cylinder on, but I want to show you how well that works. So I put the vacuum line on there. It's stopped leaking. That gives me a little bit of time to compare the two wheel cylinders. So let's see what we have here. This is the old wheel cylinder. There's the line, there's the bleed screw, the pistons, and push rods. Also on here, you'll notice it has on it NAPCO Japan 11/16. That's the bore size, the size of the cylinder in there. If I look at the new one in comparison, the mounting holes are in the same place, the flanges are the same, bleed screws, the lines, the push rods, and most importantly, 11/16, and it happens to be the same company makes them. This could well be a remanufactured unit that used to be common